Welcome back to In Presence We Trust, a podcast about the art and heart of holding group transformational spaces. I'm Rachel Rickards, founder of the Field Facilitator Training. In Presence We Trust is a sanctuary for aspiring and experienced facilitators seeking to evolve their craft in emergent facilitation and embodied leadership. In each episode, I've been harvesting insights from leading edge group facilitators doing transformational work in fields like relationship, embodiment, therapy, intimacy, education, tantra, and the temple arts. In this episode, I'm joined by a outrageously special guest, a very colorful, when he walks into the room, you know he's there. And this man's name is Dane Tomas. And this conversation with Dane is a true joy and pleasure. Dane is a ritual artist and a spiritual pioneer with over 20 years of experience in creating group spaces. He specializes in weaving non-dual spirituality, magic, and sacred sexuality into experiences that catalyze deep personal and collective change. And his work is dedicated to envisioning a new global culture of embodied spiritual awakening. He creates spaces and also media, art, music that invites connection with self, soul, spirit, and the deep dark, the mystery, the void. So this episode is a fun one, and one I invite you to deeply listen and inquire into as Dane and I speak about many super engaging and thought-provoking inquiries around group facilitation and what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I'm super touched to have spoken more in depth with Dane around, there's many threads, but we get some real juicy reflections from Dane on how he and how other facilitators can upgrade and bring more ritual into their work. We also talk about devotion, magic, temple work, soul initiation, and what it means to birth a new world. So I invite you, this is our first episode of this new year of 2025. And if you're ready to jump in and join me and Dane Tomas, please join me by taking a deep breath.
I'm just going to share a little bit of my personal love of you for a moment, and then I'll let you kind of also share a little bit of what you think people should know about you. But we met actually almost 6 years ago exactly in Egypt together with Bruce Lyon. And I didn't know you at all before that. So I have the pleasure of having to have gotten to know you in person first, because I think many people know you from your online persona and bigness. And one of the most, I'm going to share something with you. It's actually kind of funny. When people know that I know you, like if they see I've commented on your post or something like that, and then they know me, one of the biggest questions I get when people see me is they're like, what's Dane like in real life? So many people have asked me that, and I think it's hilarious. And it just goes to show like this big personality and this big, like you say the things that other people are terrified to say. And you have a charisma and a courage and a no bullshit, black and white, just like, this is how I see it. That's so refreshing. I think that people they kind of slide in on your truth, like your truth authentic blast, that they just like love and kind of want to be like you, but are too scared to. So they just keep following and reading because they can't wait to see what the fuck you're going to say next. and it's really fascinating and enthralling. And so I'm really excited today. So all those people who keep asking me, that I can just say like, hey, here's a conversation with Dane. And what I love to tell people about you is how cool you really are in real life, and how much I deeply enjoy you. And just thinking about the last time you came to my place and you came over and we sat down on the couch and just breathed and touched and sounded for like 30 minutes, to the point where I was like, at some point I'm going to have to talk and it's going to be awkward, but I'm just going to have to talk at some point. And I don't think people would think that about you, something like that, of like how you prioritize nervous system regulation and being in the body and being vulnerable and soft. And yeah, anyway, those are some of my things about you that I love.
Thank you. It's a very beautiful and humbling and lovely intro. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. And so, like, professionally, I would love for you to give everyone a little introduction to who you are, and like, for the purposes of this podcast, having it be mostly around your journey, or how you became a group facilitator is like that part is the part that I would love to zero in on.
Beautiful. And that's quite easy, because I feel like of the many different chapters that I've been in professionally, I'm not sure if I'm a professional at some things, but I'm very unprofessional proudly in a lot of ways, like but one area that I have sought to be professional, and that I think is one of my favorite channels, is facilitation. And I've been facilitating since I was 20. So I've been facilitating something for like 25 years, 27, wow. 26. How even old am I? About 25 years, right? And so for me, there's been a kind of interesting pathway from sort of being an arts facilitator. I was a rapper and musician working with like at-risk kids and that sort of stuff. And that was my first learning to tackle, like, oh my God, how do you engage a group of like angry and depressed and marginalized teenagers some of them have drug addictions and shit like that, and it was, and beautifully, because I was working for various councils and things, I got little bits of education. I went and did like a one-day facilitation course around like, go around in a circle and ask people to share something, and kids would be like, I'm bored. And we're like, amazing. So great, Daryl. Thanks for sharing, like, so I was learning all that awkward stuff a long last time ago. And I guess my trajectory has gone through being an artist, being really deep in spiritual development, going more into personal development, then coming out into kind of tantra and embodiment, and then finding myself really going all in on more being a ritualist and working with the occult and in esoteric spaces. And so there's this thread of like spiritual growth, personal development, esoteric and ritualistic practice, which is much more part of my life. And then interestingly, coming back into being an artist these last 5 years. So there's a very interesting sort of 20-ish year arc, or almost 30-year arc for me, of like artist to facilitator to kind of, borderline cult leader to, whatever, all the way back through to artist. And facilitation and working with groups seems to be a really consistent theme. And, I remember being in like 2008 when I was trying to be a life coach. It was a really awkward time of like, I've gone to coaching school, I learned some amazing stuff like NLP based coaching and stuff that at the time seemed super fucking cutting edge. And what sort of set me apart, a lot of the people in the courses were executives, and I was this little rapper in a hoodie, who was like angry at everyone and like triggered by the corporate stuff and the money stuff. I hated it. And I remember the first woman I sat next to in my induction, she was called Carolyn, and we learned the same stuff, and we got back together like a year later in this training. And she's, how are you going, Dan? I'm like, it's kind of hard. She's like, I've been having a wonderful time. I just call up my husband's CEO friends, and, I've been charging them $10,000 for a 3-session package. And I was like, you just call your CEO friends. Like all I knew was like rappers and telemarketers, and I'd have club promoters and DJs, but mostly not at an underground, not like super successful ones, like trying to make it underground ones. And I'd have my friend, one of my 2 clients, come up and be like, bro, can't pay you this week, so just have this bag of weed. And I was just like, this bitch is making $5,000 a fucking session, and my guys can't even pay me for a $50 session. And what happened is I found my path with group. I started doing talks. I realized normal people, for some unknown reason, are scared of talking to groups. I am not. I had a rap battle career, so I had been, used to walking into environments where half of the room is booing you. So walking into a room of people who want to know what you have to say seems almost unfair. It's almost too easy, and so I clocked on maybe around 2011, 2012. Maybe a lot of the people around me are not well off, but I can do $50 a head for 8 people at a time and have them in my lounge room, and we'll learn about chakras, or we'll learn business, or we'll do energy work, or we'll do whatever the fuck I was learning. I just realized working with small groups was fun, was interesting, opened up more kind of creative dynamics, and I just went for it. And that was kind of my solution to like, okay, well, I don't have a lot of rich people in my networks, but I know a lot of people and I can make interesting things. And so I just went through a period of like making up I went from like the pickup seduction, where I remember having all these guys who wanted to learn how to pick up women, and by the time they got to my course, I wasn't really into that anymore. I was doing more like men's work, and they were all really disappointed because I had an integrity upgrade, and they wanted to like learn to pick up chicks. And I was like, okay, I'm teaching like David Data shit. But the point was, I realized if I had cool ideas, I could package them into group spaces, and I only needed 1 or 2 bits and pieces to confidently walk into a room, and we would create using the magic of the group. And it's very interesting that no matter how many different sort of shifts I've had, that seems really that's what I'll be doing here on a couple of nights on New Year's Eve. We're doing ritual to bring in the new year, and it's on the new moon, and I'll really gauge. I've got a few people coming, and once we're all in the room, I'll gauge what the group needs, and we'll create something from there, rather than presupposing it'll be kinky, or it'll be meditative, or it'll be esoteric, or it'll be sexy. It's like, well, I don't really want to impose on them what it should be. I would like to see who is called, and then we'll extract the DNA of what wants to happen. And that's, I've been working like that almost for 20 years, 15 years for sure. And I love that.
That's so what you just described is basically what I call field facilitation. Like it is like being in the emergent opening of what wants to happen. And I'm curious, like, what was the shift you made from having, like, I don't know, the days where maybe you had a script, or you had, this is what we're going to do, to that? Like, what created that shift for you?
I mean, I prefer to be somewhat loose. That is my strong natural preference. And it's real challenging for me. I facilitated with lots of other groups and companies and whatnot. And when I would roll up and they would roll out like a, Tony Robbins style, I'm like, you've got this broken down to 15-minute increments. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, can't we just like, and I've had some amazing collaborators and learn from those guys, because I'm just not really like that. I like structure, but for a very long time, I prefer structure with spaciousness inside of it. So I learned, I guess, some of the early spiral practitioner trainings was just like, I didn't have a team. I didn't have systems. The methodology was incredibly systemized, but the early trainings were like, I open a Facebook group, you paid your money, here's the address, there's a smoothie bar and a chicken shop across the road. I will be in this room teaching the thing. See you there, and like 5 or 6 years later, we had a company with everything, people doing all the things you would expect from a professional fucking seminar. But back then it was just like, you roll up and I'm just sitting in a room with cushions on the floor, and okay, what are we going to do? All right. So, so I'm more lean that way. And what I learned over the years is some structure is really helpful. So I've more come the other way, I guess. And I think it's just like it was when I was a musician. I used to rap with another guy in my first round, and we had all these songs, and people in certain towns knew the songs, and I'd be like, "Come on, bro, can we just freestyle more of the set?" He's like, "We got this EP, but people know these songs." I'm like, "Yeah, but we fucking did them before. I don't really care, you know." And so we would have to negotiate, and I'd be in like he would appease me by saying, "Okay, we can have like 2 skits, one freestyle, some sort of comedy thing that you can lead, and then we're going to do our like song that everyone likes." And I'm like, "Fine, okay." So if anything, for me, it's been more about disciplining myself that structure is really useful, and and finding that structure and flow balance. But if left to my own devices, I like to be able to feel the room and pivot and make shit up, and that's my kind of more happy place,
Totally. And just like, this is a question out of personal curiosity. Were you confronted with a lot of participants who were challenged by that? Like, who were just like, this is not professional and you need to have a structure and this needs to be more thought out and I'm paying for a professional thing? Or did everyone just come and they like knew this was the Dane Tomas show and they were cool with riding the wave?
I think the Dane Tomas show gets me a lot of I get away with a lot because of that, and I think um, what's tucked under there, this thing about I'm not professional. The mastery is hidden in energetics. Like at the same time, when I work with people in ritual spaces and they don't know how to like demark a very clear beginning, middle, end, read the temperature of the room, re-engage someone who's maybe a little lost or whatever, or play the wrong music. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I thought you were committed to this stuff. And I realized like, I guess my emotional and energetic bodies to have done a lot of work. And so I'm trusting that a lot. And, for me, its structure is useful more so in terms of when we want to work together as a group, unless we've achieved an incredible level of like a mind meld, synergization, which obviously can happen, but it's almost like you need to be at the jazz musician level of like, we just know each other's moves. Obviously, by bringing in people and we haven't worked together much, having a structure and a plan and a system, that's when that really happens. And that was the same for me in business. Like I loved just making it up as I went along. And then I reached a point where, okay, I have a team. We're doing like, nearly $1 million a year in revenue. We have people wanting to buy. Okay, we're going to build a predictable rhythm across the year, and we're going to choose our dates from 12 months to 18 months ahead, and all that. So basically, what I see is you need more structure the bigger the thing gets. Right. And I would say that my early day renegade business tactics, they really worked for people who were highly kinesthetic, got a big trust in my particular flavor, and I would deliberately kind of like try to shoo away like overly analytical people in my early days. I would like deliberately put spelling mistakes on landing pages and all this stuff of like, and someone's concerned about it, I'm like, cool, he's not our client. Say no. Like, what do you mean? Well, if you're that concerned about that, you're going to have a real bad time. And like, have people go crazy when they come in from lunch and I'm just there eating a banana for like 10 minutes and just letting like, what's happening here? I don't understand what's happening. And it's like, I'm just like, and it's like, I'm just fucking around. In the early days, I would kind of just, anyone who's too much of a control freak, don't come and work with me. And nowadays it's very different, and I enjoy making all kinds of people feel safe and feel welcome, and appealing to different learning styles and all that stuff has been quite integrated. But I think in the early days I love experimentation, so that's really where it's coming from. And
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot a little, but hopefully it's worth it. It's for a little story time. Like if you can think of what is the most unexpected, like with this style of facilitation, just walking in, what is the most unexpected thing that's happened or that's come through you that wasn't planned, like a spontaneous group something?
Okay, so when I was doing I had after I sold the Spiral School of Awakening, I had to I'm like, cool, I'm taking some years off. I'm just going to make music. And then I spontaneously launched something called Lightbringer. And Lightbringer was about landing the soul in the body, working with the archetype of Lucifer and Luciferian consciousness. So Lucifer, not the devil, but Lucifer as the idea of like the most beautiful and brightest of all the angels who landed on earth, as a metaphor for like soul and spirit coming into matter, right? That was the Lightbringer course. And I remember having one guy who was very, we would do the rituals one day of the week, and then midweek we would do like Q&A processy kind of stuff. And I remember having one guy just super bringing like really heady, okay, but what about this and that? And I was just like, this is not what this is. So basically I was like, okay, such and such, are you open to doing an embodied intervention? He's like, yeah, cool. I'm like, all right, so let's get out the coconut oil. Okay, so we're all going to take our finger and put it in our ass right now. And we're just going to be with that and breathe. And, me and such are going to do that. You're cool with that. And everyone else, I encourage you to join in. You're under no obligation. But, okay, let's do it. So we just, and then just be there and breathe together and, let the
in each other's
dilate.
ass or in your own?
No, in our own. So it was like basically what I could feel was like someone wanting to be coached in a mental way. And I'm like, oh my God, that is so like 10 years ago. Like I'm not getting into that, like, and let's just drop the nervous systems and people, people went with it, and we just breathed and dropped it down and then, okay, cool. All right, cool. You good? Do you have, no, I don't even have that question anymore. It's gone. Great. Amazing. All right, next. And I remember getting off, we close. And then I get a message from probably the richest client that I've ever had, like super successful US-based entrepreneur. And he's just like, oh my God, Dane, like I've been in all kinds of courses and, I've done Tony Robbins and I've done ayahuasca and I've done this, but I've never seen that happen before. And that was amazing, and I'm just like, yeah, I didn't know that was coming either, but it just felt like that's what we're going to do, and it was just like, that could happen. But it's also a reading the room. Like there's many rooms where I would never do that. And of course not. But it was just, you've come into the like, the Luciferian soul initiation, crazy, whatever. Like this is about radical discontinuity. This is about interrupting, the pattern. And, ironically, that kind of is a Tony Robbins move, but maybe not through that particular portal, but like,
yeah.
Like, yeah.
I'm so curious. Do you think because you were online, like that worked and it maybe in person might not have gone the same way?
I think that,
have you done it in person too, like that?
Yeah, not as a pattern interrupt in the middle of a coaching session, but we have worked with anal work in plenty of spaces, and that's it's fine. I think it's just I have one of the quotes I have on my little digital vision board is Robert Anton Wilson, and the quote is "Reality is what you can get away with," and I have believed and lived that quote for nearly 20 years. I'm just like, it's just about reality frames, and if our frame is strong enough and stable enough and relaxed enough, then other people will be able to embrace that frame. And there's certain at this point in the game, I am choosing who comes into what room as well, so that's kind of, it's something that might not be obvious if someone's just listening to this going, that's crazy, I wouldn't do that in my courses. It's like, well, you got to understand, this stuff that you've talked about of like this online brand and reputation, it's a very strong filtering mechanism.
Yeah.
So it's sort of allows, it's the first level of defense in a way. It's like, it's like, okay, if you're not horrified by me posting a picture of, I don't know, hot babes naked dancing with a goat at the full moon, like then, you you've made it past that and you still are interested in what I'm really about, then maybe we can do something.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. You're a real living teaching of, I teach so much to my group facilitators about marketing, and they're always like, how do I like get the people in? And I'm like, you don't, you just share your authentic message and the right people come. And that is marketing to me. It's like, how can I refine my message to attract with more precision exactly those people that are supposed to be with me? And now in more recent years, I'm getting to the place like you, which my version is different, of just like scaring people away. Like, I'm so tired of dealing with the wrong people in these spaces who just simply aren't supposed to be there, that it's like, how do we just filter it out through our marketing messaging? So
Yeah,
you're the living, breathing, really beautiful embodiment of that teaching.
thank you. I'm quite good at that thing.
Or Lucifer. I was actually, my daughter's name is Lilith. And at one point I was talking about, if I had another child and it was a boy, like what would be the name that would be comparable? And came up with like, maybe I would name my boy Lucifer. Like Lucifer and Lilith would be cool, right?
I love that. Yeah.
Speaking of which, I was hanging out with my daughter this morning, and she loves putting on temporary tattoos. And this morning she was putting them on, and she had a little butterfly one. And I knew I was talking to you today. So I said, Lilith, what if we put it like right here on your cheek? Do you want to put a tattoo here? And you know what she said? She said, no, Mom, that would be really silly. So I would share that with you, and lead me to ask you. I'd like to talk a little bit about Magick. And
Cool.
in case people can't see through the screen, the beautiful tattoo that you have on the side of your face, Magick obviously means something really important to you. So I'd love to hear about like what this magic, and particularly you even spell magic with a K. Curious to just get a little transmission from you about the importance of magic.
Yeah. So where to begin? So I came from a background of studying comparative religion at university. I was interested in magic with a K since I was a teenager, and we can get into what that means in a moment. And I've strongly came through sort of a Eastern philosophical path. Buddhism largely, non-dual tantric philosophy, that kind of stuff really got me when I was 20-ish. I was a little bit into kind of Taoism and stuff like that in my teens. I was into, Kung Fu and Qigong, and remember reading Mantak Chia when I was 16 and telling my mum, like, I'm not going to ejaculate anymore, Mum. I want to be enlightened, So I inhaled a lot of Eastern pathways, but I was always interested in what I would call the Western esoteric path. And there's a few strong threads in the Western esoteric path, but two of the biggest figures for me that got my interest again in my teens and late teens were Aleister Crowley, who I know is a very problematic figure. So people know about him, like, oh my God, he was, and H.P. Blavatsky, who was before Crowley's time, who founded the Theosophical Society. And those two people, there's a few others, but they are two of the biggest, kind of both attempted an East and West spiritual synthesis in different ways. And that really captivated me at a young age. This idea of what is the mystical truth that sits behind all religions. That's really what we're pointing at there. And after, I guess, a lot of different practices, being quite committed to kind of Buddhist practice, going into Tantra, both Neo Tantra and kind of non-dual classical Tantra, et cetera, meditation, blah, blah, blah. I had kind of a breakdown around 2019. My best friend died, COVID hit, a lot of stuff happened. And I really examined, like, what do I believe? What are the principles, spiritual principles that I want to live by? what of the things that I believe have I kind of accumulated more dogma and kind of superstition and assumptions? Like, for example, I find Buddhism a beautiful philosophical and practical structure. However, the kind of implication that you should or need to become enlightened, I think, is problematic, and it's problematic for Western people particularly. And it's, just in this really dark period, I just really examined everything and kind of banished a lot of stuff out of my system. And it became really clear that magic, particularly ritual magical practice, was a very central for me as a practical and philosophical pathway. You could call it almost like an operating system. I was like, okay, I choose this as my operating system. I reject Christianity. I reject even Buddhism. And even though I only reject it lightly because I still use it, but I'm not centering my reality in like Buddhism or Christianity or whatever. I'm centering it in magic. So what does that mean? Basically, my take on magic is at the least mature level, it's the idea that you create your reality. It's very not that different to The Secret, law of attraction, manifestation, yada, yada, yada. Once you start walking that path more deeply, it really becomes a realization of like, well, yeah, it looks like you create your reality, but really you are the cosmos, and therefore that's unfolding through you. So, the further you go down it, the more there becomes a kind of dissolution or an integration with the one, which is essentially the same as Eastern religious practice. And so for me, magic with a K is the use of practical ritual to align ourselves with the cosmos. That's about as simple as I can put it. And that can be done for small, purposes, like making stuff happen the way you want it to happen. But more and more over time, I guess I would relate to what is typically called high magic, which is really ritual to practice as a way of aligning the small self with the big self. And then things seem to go really smoothly when that happens as a side effect. But the point is not, getting the Lambo or attracting the partner or whatever. The point is realizing self as God or cosmos or whatever. So so basically there's a lot of paths to that, but magic is the one that relates and resonates to me the most. And yeah.
And when you say aligning, I think you said aligning self with the cosmos, what is that? What does that mean for someone who's like, how do I even?
What does that mean? I mean, I guess it's like, there's so many different ways this can be done, but like, for example, one of the simplest things I would do before I say I'm going to run stuff here on whatever night it is, Monday night, whatever the last day of the year is. I've lost track of the days right now. Tuesday night. I run a self-pleasure ritual, right, that I do in person and online called church. And before we do church, or before we do the erotic practice of church, we basically sit through imagination and intention, connect to the land that we're on. We do it on full moon. So the next thing we do is connect to the moon. Then we connect to wherever the sun is. And then we connect to the kind of vast expanse of the sky. And then we connect to the black hole at the center of the galaxy. And then we connect to the whole thing. And so there's just through visualization and experiential sensory reality, just expanding the concept of who am I and what am I back to everything. And then we can pull it back to like, oh no, actually I'm this body, I'm whatever. And then we're going to do some self-pleasure practice, or we're going to write our goals, or we're going to do whatever. But I want to do that regularly, immersing myself back in the one. So it's like, the cliched metaphor that all the mystics love, it's like this, like the droplet and the ocean. And it's like, okay, I am the droplet, but really there's no one droplet. There's just one ocean. But no, I'm this little droplet, but I'm also the ocean. And it's like, that's kind of, a lot of us with all different spiritual paths have some sense of this. And for me, magic is a really reliable and practical way of anchoring in that regularly. And obviously the way I the way I like to work with anything is kind of an integral approach. So I'm borrowing from everywhere, and I'm looking at things across multiple levels of development, and I'm doing, I'm bringing in modern things and ancient things and whatever. But essentially, if I'm feeling shitty, I'm going to stand outside and do my qigong, and I'm going to root myself into the ground and root myself into the sky, and I'm open to all of it, and various different practices. But that's kind of the gist of what I'm doing as daily practice.
Yeah. Awesome. And I know like recently you've been really excited / passionate / considering teaching more of this, like how to bring ritual magic into group facilitation. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about like some of the threads of what you would bring through, like what you feel is missing. And also just like, I was recently talking to Amanda Bickham, who I know we mutually know, and we were also talking about this because she brings a lot of ritual into her groups. And we were talking about this like lost art where people are just like, where do I go to learn? I want ritual in my life, but I don't even, unless I read a book, like who can I impart this knowledge from? So I'd love to get a little transmission from you around what those pieces of teaching that you would love to bring through to facilitators.
Nice. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of levels to this, it's like whether, like there's the kind of fast and easy 3 tips you could do, and then there's like, okay, how do you become a person that is more alive to the sacred, and it's like, you see it like when, obviously I facilitate with ISTA, which ISTA level 1 to me is a good foundational place to start connecting to life force, erotic connection, and that's been an interesting place to see, because I don't have the same filtering system in place with like an ISTA level 1 is quite mainstream for me, and whereas like my world is very filtered, like you've come through the Dane Tomas filters. So if you've made it to this temple in this lounge room that I'm in right here, you've come through a whole bunch of qualifying things. You probably know some stuff about some stuff, like, or you've got a friend that has pulled you into a world that they trust you're going to make it, and so that's really cool.
Go like on Eventbrite and buy a ticket and come into your temple at home.
I mean, they kind of can. I'm using Humanitics, and they kind of theoretically can. And I am getting always a couple in the room who are a little more new in their experience, which I love, But especially at this stage where it's very small, I'm hosting things for like 20 people at a time. I'm very much trusting the kind of force field of what I'm doing. There's a really good sorting mechanism, but having built a modality and grown that to impact like fucking tens of thousands of people, I think we trained like 500 practitioners or something in the time that I ran the spiral. By the time I was doing like the 16th training, I think I got to, the practitioner trainings, we had to go through multiple initiations around making the training more professional, slowing it down, qualifying who got in there, giving a bunch of pre-trainings to get them in the room, which when I was first starting, this is kind of a sidetrack, but it feels relevant. I didn't have any of that. I just sit in a room doing clearing, and most of the people who did the training were my friends or had been clients. And I was just hardcore, it was the equivalent of like a shamanic training where the shaman's like, cool, if you can drink as many cups as me, you're going to do well. That was kind of the attitude of like, all right, we're going to do clearing. And I'm not going to lie, this is going to fuck you up. But if you want to be in, you got to be able to walk the gauntlet, and then like, this is pre any kind of trauma informed anything. And I feel like I got my trauma informed stripes from like, 3 or 4 trainings deep, going like, this is fucking people up, and like we had a culture in our community of like almost celebrating how intense it was. And then I was starting to change. I was doing way more embodiment work, learning nervous system stuff, mobility practices, brain left and right brain hemisphere stuff. Like, and so I was changing how I work with my clients, but I had created this little kingdom of like, and of course it'll shatter your life, but hey, that's because this is the most powerful work in town, and it was like, and I remember being about 2014, 2015, being like, hey guys, we need to change this narrative. Like, this is really is not it. And so then so much more emphasis became on integration, and so much had to be like slowing. No, you don't want to come do practitioner training yet. Maybe go through the process a couple times and learn about what it is. And if that all feels great, in a year, you should. And it like everything changed from like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Of course, if we've got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet kind of it. That was my sort of 2013 sort of attitude. And like, my heroes are people like Richard Bandler, who was one of the NLP creators, who like, he fucked up a lot of people, who like rearranged people's values around and then just leave them to go out in the world. And like, they don't know who they are anymore. And like, after a couple of years of that, it became very clear that things needed to be re-engineered. I guess that was such a total sidetrack, but what I get with ISTA is this remembrance, when people are stepping in there and it's their fucking first workshop or whatever, or their first time coming into like a temple, particularly this language of temple, maybe people have done a lot of personal development, but they're like, what is a temple? And they think it's like Shabbat or something. I'm like, okay, it's not that. This is very, very different unless you're some kinky Jews. And that, or you're creating temples, you're creating beginner temple spaces, and then some people just kind of clump in and they're chatting and you're like, oh, it's this reminder of like, okay, so some people haven't had this sacred thing installed. So I guess that's, for me, if I was coaching facilitators, which I'm probably going to return to doing again in the next couple of years, I'll be starting with, cool, what are your own practices? What is your own connection to the sacred? Can you become quiet inside? Can you track subtle energetics? Are you in touch with different bodies? Do you have some sort of relationship to different bodies within your physical body? That kind of stuff to me counts as real basic, and it's a fucking constant eye opener when I meet some veteran facilitator. I'm like, oh, you don't feel the emotional body at all. Oh my God. Like, and I'm like, okay, like Cancerian ritual snob. I'm like, okay, she just played the wrong song too loud. Okay, this is going to be a nightmare, and then realizing what I've come to realize from working with people all over the world is what is sacred and what is ritual is very different for different people. But for me, there are some basics that if you're facilitating group stuff and you want to make it deeper or more meaningful or more rich, the basicest thing is clarity of intention for me. And it sounds really small, but I feel like because I hold really deep intentions, even my online spaces can be places of massive fucking transformation, because there's something I'm holding around transformation and magic that is like, that's the fucking point of my life. So if you come and work with me, there's something happening even in your psyche as you come towards me, because I'm holding a symbol of something, But as either a new facilitator or a facilitator who's maybe experienced, but they're more experienced in the, what do we want to call it, the personal reality, the body mind reality, whatever the mundane reality of supporting people to learn a thing, which is obviously useful and important. I think it's about connecting to something bigger and something deeper and bringing that into the space from the get-go, and like so intentionalizing each section of a workshop and getting people to reflect on what is going on inside their inner world at regular points throughout a thing. I think those sorts of things. And then I think like something more and more for me that is important is like mastery of space creation, which is like the more attuned I've gotten, the more it's like a make or break. And I walk in and I'm like, oh, the lighting, oh, the sound, oh, but also just the creation of containership where it's like, okay, if we're doing it something sacred and serious, the fucking doors are closed and everyone waits outside and they drop into silence. And if someone wants to go and sage them or whatever the style of the particular culture you're building, but like this bringing people into intentionality of ceremony, I think is really powerful. But I think the thing that makes a difference between whether it's real or whether it's fucking cosplay. Like, I'm sure you've been in rooms where someone's rattling with a rattle, and I'm like, I feel like each time she rattles that rattle, it's getting less sacred in here, not more. You know, it's just like, because it's not connected to anything. It's just like parroting, copying something you've seen, and this could be someone who's like, I've been 20 years in this thing. It's like, yeah, but you don't feel anything, like, you know. And so, like, if you've been in the new age world as long as I have, I mean, you've been around for quite a long time, well, you've seen a lot of stuff, right? And some of it's amazing, some of it's fucking corny. And it's like, I think there's something about sincerity of intention, and there's something around, like, for one of, I don't know what exact word to use, but it's like connection to vibration, you know, to connection to a sense of aliveness. And this is what I see. Like, there's people who were, you know, been exposed to some tradition or some practice, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to, and then I go to their thing and I'm like, oh, this is nothing. Like, you call the directions, but did the directions really show up? I didn't really feel anything. And someone, you know, and they do a lot of hoo-ha pantomime, you know, and it's like, and then I go somewhere else and someone does something really simple and I'm like, oh fuck, what just happened? Something just shifted. Whoa, we're in ritual space, you know. And it's like, because that person has in their essence, you know, the ability to drop through layers of themselves, and they've done it a lot, and when they do it, we feel it. And I just did a theater training for a little 8-week theater training, and you know, we're doing lots of different exercises and practices. It wasn't like super mainstream. It was much more about tapping into what's alive in a space at a given moment. So there was heaps of pieces that I'm like, this is so good for ritual. And you know, one of them was like, we're repeating these kind of ritualized actions, like playing out a section from a myth with a partner. It was Orpheus and Eurydice, and it's like the story of he goes to the underworld to get his lost love, and you're just acting it out with another person without words. And we're in pairs, and we had opportunity to watch the other pairs and be watched and do this thing over and over and over and over and over. And what became clear is like the people that were really essentialized in their actions, they weren't doing a lot, they were just being the thing. You start to get drawn in and like, oh my God, it does feel like they were lovers across lifetimes. Oh my God, it does feel like he's dragging her back from the under. I can feel it, you know? And then there'd be others that kind of overhammed it up, and too many. And I'm like, oh, this just turned into a comedy. Like, he's really, you know, sucking because he's overdoing it. And it's like, okay, I've seen that in 100 temples where it's like, oh my God, I'm a priestess. And it's like the hands are all, and it's like, okay, settle the fuck down and just bring some presence, you know, bring some presence and some like inner energy of sacredness. And it's like, oh, when I walk up to the door and that person is standing there, something in me goes, oh, we're doing something meaningful. I better fucking be quiet inside myself, because this person, gravitas is the word I'm looking for. It's like, can you drop yourself into the state you want to take the people into? I think is one of my biggest hacks. And it's like, because a lot of the things that I'm doing them by myself often. You know, my self-pleasure rituals fucking go off, and it's like, well, I've run like 200 of these, and I use sex magic as part of my life for a good 10 years. So I am not trying to do the performance of a self-pleasure sex magic ritual. I am bringing you into a world that I already deeply have access to, and that I think translates, you know. And it's the same when I'm going to other people's spaces. I step into something like, oh, this person owns this frequency, like, and something in my body just relaxes when I hear a certain tone of voice that is like this owning of something. And I think that's some of the qualities that I think make things feel more ritualistic. And I think I think this is for people who are newer. It's like, you know, we live in this fucking Instagram quick capitalize spiritual capitalism thing where it's like, so I just did a workshop and now I'm going to teach that thing next week. And it's like, I don't think that's bad per se, but the way, if you are in that category, you should be teaching that thing more from the point of view of like, we're going to learn together. Like, if there's things that I am wanting to learn and deepen in at the moment. And so what I do is call in peers that are at a similar level, and we do it together. I don't bill it as like I'm teaching myself how to Yeah, I'm not trying to pretend to be a master in something I'm not. I'm deepening my relationship to Kabbalah because I'm doing ceremonial magic, which a lot of it is built on um, sacred Jewish mysticism, which has been appropriated by Europeans and turned into like magical stuff, which it's a kind of one of the risks of every tradition you can get your hands on. But because of that, I'm working with the Kabbalah a lot, and I have a couple of different Jewish friends who have some Kabbalah knowledge that I'm kind of jamming with them, and I'm playing with it more privately or more in small collective spaces that I'm not that's not what's on the tin. I'm not saying, hey, come and learn this thing from me that I am simply a dabbler in. I'm cooking that in a way that I think is in integrity, but we still get to play with it. But it's
Yeah.
not, I'm not like Dane Tomas, teacher of Jewish mysticism. Hi. It's like, we're not going to do that. That would be a bad idea, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. So this qualifier for me, like what you're saying is like basically how much are you living the practices that you're trying to teach,
mm-hmm.
essentially. And that's what's able to be felt through someone's facilitation. Like it's either
Yeah.
that they're doing the thing that they think they're supposed to do because they're facilitating versus like, oh, you have a practice with this. You've been
Yeah.
journeying with this. And there's a frequency that they don't have to try. They just can be the embodiment of
Yes.
the thing.
Yeah, and it's like when you go to a tantra space, and it's like, I've hung out with that guy. He's not super tantric in his approach to life, you know. And then someone else, you go in, and it's like, she hasn't said or done anything, but I just feel like the way she sees the world is like doing stuff to me right now, you know. And it's like, yes, that person has lived that as a life path, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this is great. And this is also another piece that I love to speak to because there's like in that. So for example, one of my practices is belly to belly. And
mm,
I, I refer to it as like, there's a field that exists for me of belly to belly, which is like
yeah,
all the times I've done the practice myself personally, all the times I facilitate it. And it's like, and I call it sometimes like an invisible iCloud. And it's like, part of ritual for me as a facilitator is how do I access that iCloud, that field of information and knowledge that I'm tapped into, and kind of bring it down and invite it into the space.
yeah,
Um, and that's how I use ritual, which is different things that are kind of just like intuitively arise through me, like the use of Palo Santo or certain sounds or asking people to take 3 deep breaths, like these really subtle things that can be invisible that people don't even
mm,
see or know that I'm doing to call in, but that means something to me and activate like um, a knowing or a remembering or an access point to that vibration or frequency.
mm, yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that takes time. And so it's like one of those questions in facilitation is like, fuck, well, what if I'm just starting out? I don't have a whole iCloud of belly to belly that exists yet. You know, I don't
Yeah,
have a whole field that I can tap into. I think some people get really lucky. Like, for example, like musicians with sound, like sound is a whole other field. Even every instrument has a whole portal of sound connected to it. And I think some people, uh, are very lucky to tap into those frequent, like they get the download of the feel through their artistry or their practice. So there's like luck and talent and practice, and really devoting yourself to the actualization of embodying these different frequencies that we invite people into.
yeah. And and just for anyone who is newer in their journey or newer in adding this part, I don't, even though I'm can be super critical of like people claiming masteries they don't have. I also think it's perfectly fine, and I love to learn through doing the thing and learn through delivering the thing actually. But I think it's about finding a way that has integrity with that. And it's like, if you wanted to become a more creative ritual facilitator, I would hold some shit in your lounge room every Sunday for a year, and I guarantee by the end of the year you'll have some fucking superpowers that a person who wouldn't do that won't have. And
Yeah.
then you can kind of listen to the space will teach you things, and I think It can be as simple as like, oh, we've made this really simple altar, but that then becomes something. Or we do a simple practice of hold hands and all close our eyes together for 1 minute, and it's like that marks an entry to something. Then at the end we all do a one-word share. Or one of my things that is like, I don't know if I learned this as a kid, but when I want to close ritual and I want to do it quickly, I just get everyone to clap in synchronization. And because I do it to close spaces and have done it since I was a kid almost, it fucking feels amazing. And like, there's a sense of like, we just closed. And like, I remember teaching with Bruce Lyon, and he's like, can you close it? Can you close something quickly? And I'm like, sure. And I go, okay, everyone, let's all face towards the mountain. Deep breath. Okay, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, clap. Okay, and the space is closed. I'm like, cool, everyone, great, let's go. And he's like, well, that was quick. And I'm like, well, you did ask for it. But it's like, it's very clear what we're doing we're telling the psyche demarcation of closure. Boom. And it's like, we can do a 1 hour of those, or we can do a 5-minute one of those. And if the intention is strong enough, and there's a sense of, I think there's a sense making in ritual as well. Like, I like when actions and movements and colors and sounds communicate the thing that we're trying to create. And I get annoyed when someone is doing ritual. Sound like such a gatekeepy motherfucker, but like, I get annoyed when someone has got 2 different things pulling in different directions of like, trying to get everyone excited with like up breathing, but we're playing like deep down descent music, and it's like, and I'll be like, which way do you want to go? Do you want to get them excited? Because I will play some more like music, or do we want to take them down? In which case, stop making them do hyperventilating breaths. But I think just collecting your little framework of archetypal and mythic and creative associations is a real fast shorthand to make things more magical. Like if I am doing an erotic temple, I'm not going to put like bright green lights on, which are a little bit nauseating and kind of almost grotesque, but if I was doing something really weird, I would literally definitely put the green lights on and go something kind of fucking unhinged and spooky. But I wouldn't be getting confused. Like, why is no one getting sexy? It's like, bro, you've got like neon green lighting and like spooky music. Like, what are you wanting to happen here?
This is so good. It's so good. This is such a great reference point. And I think like what you're saying is also like, start to live this shit in your life. Like to, when you want to get sexy, what do you do? I find that so hard that people do different things with groups than they would naturally do for themselves. It's one of the like do what you would do for yourself. Would you?
Yeah, because, and I think this is the thing of like, elements of my performance background have really helped me, and elements of it have been obstacles to get out of the way. And I think when people have an acting background or a singing background or what, if that involved like putting on a mask, singing competitions or singing at people's wedding, whatever the thing is, or they were a professional trainer or whatever your other roles that you've had that relate to like interfacing with groups, a lot of those need to be shed. It's almost like if we're wanting people to feel us, we need to de-armor these characters and these masks a little bit. And it's really interesting, when I very first was doing arts facilitator stuff, like I was saying, we did like a 1-day facilitator training, and it was super on point. And I cannot remember the name of the guy. He's a South American facilitator guy who has a lot of work, but one of his models is you've got to kill the teacher. You've got to kill the role of the kind of power over or the controlling person, and to facilitate is to kind of become more empty and sort of more, I feel it more circular. And I'm more, not entirely, because I will use authority or kind of priest vibes here and there for sure, but in the energetics, like clear voice that cuts through, that works really well, right? So there's a contradiction of, I'm going to give people clear direction, but in the energetics and we're moving more into inviting, and we're moving more into space creation, and not telling people what to do and not telling people what to feel. And I think when someone has a performer that they know how to put on, it gets you through the first early stage of, you're confident to stand there because you know how to be this character. But people don't feel you deeply, people who can feel don't feel you deeply. And if we're trying to drop people into deeper states, I think being able to go into your own emotional body, being able to be vulnerable, being able to take yourself there first is really one of the keys, rather than pretending things.
Thank you for nailing this point home. And I think it's one of the biggest ones to get. I think there's some room for fake it till you make it, but again, you've kind of stressed, it's like in your living room with your friends, is like, but not when you get to a certain level of holding yourself and bigger groups. And
I mean, it's also okay to fuck it up in a bigger group, and you kind of have to, but
totally.
But it's also desirable. I think for me, it's like, where's the dance there? It's like, that took me a while, especially facilitating with ISTA, where I'm like, I've already mastered my own stuff, but now I need to come and teach your guys stuff, which I'm a master at doing. But taking a group into it initially was like, oh, this is really quite hard. And doing it in a field that is very established, that has its little traditions and ways, and it's like, oh my God, how do I do this and not be emulating this person or that person? And it was only when I was like, oh, I have to step in there and potentially fuck it up. And it's like, oh, I don't want to do that, And it's like, when we're not talking like, typically not talking catastrophically fuck it up or forget what I'm doing halfway or lose the group, but we're definitely talking do the thing and then sit down back on the couch and confer and go, yeah, I could have done, oh, that could have been better. Oh, I wish I did that. And like, once I got comfortable to do some of those, I noticed I started getting better and stronger and more easeful and more at my ease. And now sometimes I do something imperfectly, but the energy is really great. So it doesn't really matter as much as like a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I was like, I've got to fucking nail this. And it's like, well, theoretically you nailed it, but it just didn't feel that good. And it's like, you were less in your ease. And, that's pretty solid in that world now. And I'm coming back, and my own rituals are pretty solid, but I'm really bringing my artists through more. And it's like, oh, I have to get out there and do some things and they not be amazing. Oh, I hate that idea. And it's because it's precious to me, And it's like, well, my two options are do a lot of reps in my lounge room with 4 people watching, which is probably, and then do some shows where it's like, actually, that wasn't a 10 out of 10, but how could it be? It's my third one. So, okay, I'm allowed to, but it's that, I guess it's like being as prepared as you can be and being as authentic as you can be. And then afterwards going like, okay, like actually they didn't really move the way I wanted them to. What could I have done differently? I think that's really,
This is really personally alive for me right now in a way too. And I'm curious if you have a version of this just for my own empathetic compassion, which is like now that for where you are now, like people have a big projection on you, I'm sure. Like there's a lot of negative projection, but there's a lot of positive projection of like Dane Tomas, oh my God. And then they bring that into the space. And then let's say you have one of these moments and you're like, oh, I could have done that better. And then you're falling off the pedestal in a way. And like, have you had to deal with people's disappointment of their own expectation violation of who you might be, which isn't based in reality, but their own positive kind of thing of who you might be? Or are you just so amazing that no one ever has that?
Haha. I haven't had a lot of it come to me around facilitation skills. I don't think that's my projections are like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people know that I'm an experienced facilitator, but I don't think that's the most charged thing that people are projecting. So that's not what they're watching. And a lot of the barriers, a lot of the things I've had to deal with is like, I get this thing of like, either people are fucking terrified of me for insane reasons, and I'll be like day 4 on some training and some kind of, the quietest, nicest person, like, and they'll be like, when I saw you on this training, I was going to transfer to a different one because am so triggered by you, but you're really lovely. And it's really, I'm like, oh, thank you. And I get like a few of those. And then I get like, what are the other one? I get a lot of stuff around unapproachable is a thing that I deal with a lot of. And it's like, I'm like, I'm a Cancerian, motherfucker. I kind of want to be unapproachable. And I've learned over time um, to drop more little human stories into the mix, to do a bit of a revealing of vulnerability here and there, you know, just to take. I don't think you can completely de-pedestal yourself. That's on them sometimes, but I do, if I'm aware of really consistent patterns, I do like to like authentically contradict those and, you know, go, oh, get a bit nervous teaching this bit or something. And I'll see some people go, oh, I wouldn't expect that. And it's like, you know, it's like just to bring a bit of that in, I think takes a lot of edges off. And
Yeah. So working more with bringing it in more consciously and who you are as a
yeah.
human. Yeah.
Um,
So we're coming to a close. We're going to close in a minute. And I'd love to complete with a little bit of the like, this has been hilarious and fantastic and perfect. And I'd love to end a little bit with some of the why for you. Like, what is the point of all of this and where is it going? And I think it might have something to do with birthing a new world, which is a phrase you've been sharing a lot recently or starting to speak into. So I'd love to just get like kind of go a little bit meta and big picture why for you.
great. I'm
Why?
sounding
Why
super culty at the moment, but I have nothing I can do about it.
go for the full cult leader?
It's like, you know, I feel like where I'm at in my life right now, I'm 46. My dad died last year. I had a couple of close deaths in the year and 2 years preceding that. So I've had a few deaths, which were beautiful openers, you know, like they weren't fun at the time to deal with. They were, you know, painful, but that pain and that grief really helped me go deeper on all these things I've been interested in, you know, as mentioned at the beginning, for decades by now. But there's just a deepening of relationship to spirit for me, for want of a better, you know, to use the most general word possible. And it's like I just genuinely feel like the most useful, but also most aligned and most joy filled and most rewarding thing that I could do is really support the landing of a more sacred culture on planet Earth. That's really the language, that is how I'm framing it. Like, it's been a similar thing for a long time, but it's just landing more deeply as a clear, like, it's less about me. And it's like, I often am like, okay, universe, where do you want me? How do you want me to do it? And I'm not really waiting for like the voice of like Jehovah to come down from the clouds. I'm more listening to like the things that just feel incredibly alive for me and that I would spend, you know, hundreds of hours on, is ritual, magic, music, artistry, supporting people to align to their purpose, creating group spaces, group initiations, group practice is really a big turn on for me. And I already do a lot of solo practice. I love my solo time for me, but I'm starting to realize like group work, and even on the bigger picture, I guess, like the magic of groups, you know, like, yes, the group that I'm working with, we do this, but your group over there do that. And can those two groups talk to each other? I really feel like, you know, bringing living spirituality into the body and into physical spaces and into matter and into nature and into the material realm is where it's at. Like, that's the most compelling game in town. And, you know, the way I feel it now is like what I want to do with the second half of my life, you know. And I feel like I've had a very good run on self-actualizing and doing the things that my personal self needed to do to kind of grow up. And I feel like relatively grown up, you know. There's little bits that could do a little bit of this and that, but like really, I want to support people who are landing temple culture, who are bringing spirituality into practical lived reality in all kinds of different ways. Like, that seems like the most alive thing for me. And I think these interests around magic, around soul initiation, around shadow work, around facilitating group spaces, around bringing artistry into all that, that's the stuff, it's not lost on me that just weirdly, a lot of my interests seem to all be kind of aligning into like, oh, that's kind of useful. Oh, my obsession with how the music should sound and whatever, it kind of seems like it's useful if I want to do these kind of rituals with these kind of people. They all seem like they're coming into one thread at this point. And, some things I feel like I have a degree of mastery. Other things I'm not desperately, because it's very joyful, but I'm very passionately just leaning into so those skills can ripen. But yeah, it's landing sacred culture, I guess, and landing more like embodied spiritual culture is what I feel really lit up by. And the language might keep finessing. I can feel it's even still sounds funny in my mind, but that's basically what I'm obsessed with,
Yeah. Amazing. I hear you also. I was just loving like hearing you try to put words on something that still feels like it's actualizing, or like it's becoming to life inside of you. And I'm curious, because we were talking before we started recording about how you've made a shift with your branding to calling your program the Dane Tomas School of Magic. And maybe it's like part of that shift that's part of this. How do I start to name this thing now?
Yeah. Dane Tomas School of Magic feels like it's previously called the Dark Field. And because I knew that connection to the non-dual dark is a big part of it. But now it's like, okay, that's one of about 4 or 5 pillars of it, actually. And I needed something that's a little more broad so I could kind of inject a bunch of this different stuff in there. And ritual magic is one of them, and kind of more esoteric teachings and soul initiation kind of stuff is another one. And it's like, it's really coming through in an emergent way. It's like create the thing and then go, oh, what feels like it wants to go in here is this. And sexuality was obviously there, but also like, soul work stuff. And so really the 2 things I'm hosting this year are going to be that, which is a membership that people can join if they want to. It's some magical and spiritual theory, and also lots of live rituals. We do sex magic every full moon, which is, as far as I know, there's no one else offering a global sex magic membership, which I do the live thing in this room now, and we also host online at the same time. So I simulcast the ritual. So, you can hear the moans from the live room and the Zoom audio. It's kind of wild. And I have a thing called Permission, which is where I mentor like leaders and facilitators and business owners who want to bring their soul purpose through more. And that's all I'm really offering for the next year. So if people are finding those, they can come find me.
And how do they find you? Like, where's the place that they read or register or like do that thing? Is there a website?
Instagram's the easiest. It's like, just talk to me, just say hi, and I'll, direct you to something if it fits. And I have music on Spotify. If you just want to hear me rap about magic, that's, sing about it and rap about it.
Nice. So at Dane Tomas on Instagram is the best.
At Dane.Tomas Instagram is a really good portal to everywhere else. Yeah.
Sweet. Dane, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and it's getting me super excited about inviting you to collaborate with me. But I have to figure out when you're coming back to Europe first. But I'd love to do some magic together in 2026.
Yeah.
Sweet. Thank you so much. And check out Dane on Instagram, and we'll put a bunch of links in the show notes to follow and find out more.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in again and listening to this next episode of In Presence We Trust, the Facilitation Podcast. If you've been enjoying this podcast and the journey we've taken you on, I can highly recommend checking out my new online 6-month field facilitator training, trauma-informed and certified. For this new special training environment, I've partnered with Catherine Hale, who you might remember from episode 6 of In Presence We Trust. Together, we are relaunching and redefining the field curriculum for trauma-informed space holding. This new pioneering training for embodied leaders and group facilitators will begin in February 2025 and includes a 2-phase certification process.
To find out more, head over to my website, www.the-field.com/online. It's going to be an incredible 6-month journey, culminating in the first ever official Field Festival, happening August 15 to 20, 2025, which will include many headlining familiar names and faces who you've already met from this podcast. Special thank you to all the beings who have contributed to the creation of this podcast: Michelle, Vaishnavi, Joby, Lavinia, the Soundfields, Thomas and John. And thank you again for joining as we continue the journey and open up this new communal space and learning environment that is In Presence We Trust. You can subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to like and comment below. Or head over to Facebook and join the In Presence We Trust community to continue the conversation there. Until next time, deep breath.